Our first speaker we're really privileged to have is Carina Hoang. Sorry, I'm not very good at pronunciation. Carina speaks to us with the authority of earned knowledge painfully gained as a refugee herself. We are truly grateful today to have Carina with us to share her journey fleeing from the Vietnam War and help us to come to a deeper understanding of the plight of those who seek refuge and our protection. As a child, Carina was resettled with her mother and her siblings in the United States. She now makes her home here in Australia with her husband and daughter. Her journey has taken her from plenty to poverty and will return to plenty. Carina is the editor of Boat People, Personal Stories in the Vietnam Exodus, a copy of which you can see there. And she's subsequently journeyed back to places of despair in Southeast Asia to honour those who have died in their efforts to seek refuge. Her story is one of determination, great spirit and courage, and also one that recognises our common humanity. Please join me in welcoming.
Good morning, can you hear me?
Yes.
Right. Thank you for having me. And one of the debates that I participated in earlier this year about Australian treatments of refugees and asylum seekers, one person in the audience asked me, Carina, what country do you think we should follow in terms of the treatments of refugees and asylum seekers? And I said, Australia, the old one. So when Stevie asked me to be a part of the discussion today, I was very excited because I felt that there's hope and also it's time for us to really revisit the way we used to be and to me that was the way it should be. So we'll talk about Reclaim and Welcome Australia, and the idea was to talk about facts and statistics, things that we can learn from, be informed so that our judgment will be more fair. And I thought, what's the best way for me to go about this to use my own statistics? Because I am one of the statistics. And to talk about the statistics of the Vietnam Exodus that I know best. Usually, refugees are victims of war, or the change of regime, or they were exiled, persecuted. Refugees often lost everything. They were affected by the journey or the camp life. They lost their loved ones, or sometimes ended up with complete grief. And my journey and my experience as a Vietnamese spokesperson, as a former refugee, I have experienced almost every item on this list that we just looked at. The facts of Vietnam Exodus. After the Vietnam War ended, the Exodus took place, which is very ironic because usually people run away because of war, but in this case it was when peace took place. The war ended. But then the communists persecuted the former Vietnamese military people or the South Vietnamese who were in the government that was against them before. For example, my father was a lieutenant colonel. He was the chief of the police department, and he was captured by the communist regime before the fall of Saigon, which is about the end of April 1975. So we lost touch with our father, and we had no idea if he was alive or dead. And when we knew he was alive and captured, we thought, oh, that would be home soon. But it took 14 years for us to see our father again. In those 14 years, it's not like he was trial and a sentence, so we knew that we counted the calendars and we expected the day he would be released. It was the unknown that we lived with. And all we had was good hope that he realized we will be seeing him someday. So that's with my father, and at home our house was confiscated, we were thrown down the street, became homeless overnight, and we were not allowed to go to school. My mom couldn't go to raise the children. We were not allowed to stay in the town where we belonged to. We were shipped to an area what we call economic zones. This is rural land, uncultivated land, where people would die with rely on. landmines or malnutrition or diseases. So that's the kind of life that people had in Vietnam that I couldn't go into details because there's not enough time. But the statistics said that more than 1 million Vietnamese people took boats that was designed to navigate the river to go to South China Sea and across the ocean and try to resettle somewhere. With the UNHCR statistic, more than 840,000 boat people arrived safely. But they also estimated 1 out of 3 perished. So you can comfortably calculate it was about 250,000 Vietnamese boat people died in South China Sea during the journey. And on top of that, people died of storms. The boat can be taken down by the storm that hundreds of people on the boat vanished that their family never heard about or knew why and where they ended up. Or the boat would drift on the water because the engine failed and eventually we ran out of food and water and then cannibalism took place. But the worst nightmare that the Vietnamese boat person would ever encounter was to be captured by pirates. Thai pirates in this case. They rape, they kill, they torture people, they rob everything we have. How horrible is it for a child to watch the mother being raped and the father was decapitated while the act was going on? Statistics had that 2 out of 3 boats out of Vietnam were attacked by pirates at least twice. Imagine if you just been attacked brutally and left, thinking what had just happened to me. You couldn't grasp that reality. Another boat came around and attacked you again, and the third and the fourth. But by the second time, since you had less valuables for them to take, they would take the anger out on you and you became even more brutal. So that's what nearly 1 million Vietnamese boat people had to endure before we reached anywhere safely. It was estimated 3,000 to 5,000 Vietnamese boat people died in refugee camp. So even if we survived that whole journey, we got to the camp, it wasn't safe. Life was still very fragile. Before I go to the beautiful statistics at the bottom of this scene here, I'd like to share with you about my journey. When I was 16, it was 1979, my sister, my brother, and I were on a wooden boat with 370 other people. We sat with these 2 Aborigines for the whole duration. Violent storm came the first day. We thought, that's it, we're not going to make it. 373 humans just get together and pray and cry all at once. Imagine that sound. And then the storm subsided, we threw up on each other, we believed on each other, got sick, and sat with that for the rest of the trip. Then we were chased by pirates a couple of times. Luckily for us, they didn't pursue us. They left us and perhaps wanted to pursue other boats that seemed easier for them to attack. And in the third day, we reached Malaysia shore, only to be shot at by the military. Because at that time, they had introduced the pushback policy. We had no way of knowing that. But regardless, we would have left Vietnam by boat anyway, and we began to take the consequences. So the military shot at our boat, pulled us out of the ocean, pretty much stopped the boat's policy, and they robbed everything we had, including our navigating tools. I'll never forget the moment when an AK-47 pointed at my little brother's back and I sat next to him. We were trembling. I can feel the fears of his and mine and my little sister all combined. Shakenly, I removed the necklace that my brother had on his neck to give to that soldier. Extremely intimidating. Look at this young kid sitting on the bottom of the boat. Look up at this man, so uniform, boots, and an AK-47 at the neck. That's a nightmare that I had with me for years. And eventually, they left us and we wandered down toward Indonesia. And we actually ran out of food and water. And people people started to die. We tossed bodies to the ocean one after another, and I had to witness every single one of them because I sat on the deck, and I was a lucky thing, because if I was stuck at the bottom with layers of people, it would have been a lot more horrible. But at 16, to watch bodies being tossed to the ocean when the husband and the children hang on to the feet and cry and beg the owner of the boat let them bury their mom somewhere when we reached land, and we couldn't. First, it was older people who died, but then once younger people died, that's when everybody realized that if we're not saved by someone or we didn't reach anywhere soon, all of us will die, young or old. And luckily we survived. We made it to a small island in Indonesia. And then we were taken to an uninhabited island, and we left there to survive with nothing but what's on our back. So part of the people on my boat became statistics of that 3,000 to 5,000 people who died in refugee camp. But back to the statistics of Australia. In the late 70s, Australia accepted 108,000 or nearly 110,000 Vietnamese boat people. That's an incredible number, especially compared to now. Can we do it again? Of course we can. We can even do more than that. But on top of that, look at the result of that 108,000 Vietnamese boat people who came to this country now. Why don't we talk about that? Why don't we talk about the contributions and the enrichments that the Vietnamese or the refugees or the immigrants from other parts of the world brought to our country? That's how we escape. Imagine that we use a bed sheet and we use what do you call rolling things to raise for help. That boat was rescued by the Navy, the US Navy outside of Vietnam. And these two boats sunk outside the Malaysia shore. No one from the government came out to help. There were some refugees from inshore who stood out trying to save them. Amazingly, talking about desperation and determination, these two teenagers made it to Hong Kong with that little boat. Mr. Tony Patrol, who sat in the second row here, was the one who took this picture because he rescued those two and brought them to the refugee camp in Hong Kong. It's a privilege to have you here today, Joe. Some of you might have seen this picture. If not in my book or in some of my presentations, you've probably seen it in the West Australian papers in 1982. These 152 people were rescued in South China Sea. And when the German hospital ship approached this boat, they thought it was a phantom boat. They didn't see anybody, just an empty boat floating on the water. When they came near and looked at that hole, 152 people were dying. So they were lucky they were rescued. And for my boat, it was 3 layers at that. Refugee camps. This is what it was like in the Philippines, and we were so happy to be in an environment like that. At least we had a place, to hide when it's rain and storm. But this is Indonesia. I would be very lucky if I came to Indonesia and had a camp like that. And this is a regular scene of refugee camps in Hong Kong, one of them at least. It was so hot and crowded that people would stand outside every day, waiting for ration or some water to drink, and then at night when school down, we would go inside and sleep. And people live in that condition for years before they get to resettle anywhere. But still they were happy because they know there's a future ahead of them. So that's when I joined the statistic. That's me in the middle there, and my sister and my brother. That was my refugee camp. It was a beach. The water in the front, the ocean in the back, the Indonesian government boat unloaded us and took off, and we looked around and we said, oh my God, what's going on here? There's no refugee camp, no shelter, nothing. Maybe something wrong with the boat. They went and had fixed it, would come back for us. Someone else said, oh, it's too far, they didn't have enough fuel, we'll go and get fuel and come back. So we waited. Storm came out every night. I was in hungry every day. The boat never came back. So initially, people died of disease and hunger and thirst. And as more boat people arrived, more people died. So at 16, I had held that baby, figuring out how to bear this little baby. When my little sister and brother were dying too, and so am I, and I'm thinking, well, I might bury this one today, who's going to bury me tomorrow? And I even helped to live in a little jungle at night. So I did experience fullness, life and birth, death and birth in the refugee camp. And we'll talk about grief and loss. How much time do you have?
6 minutes.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. I have lost a dear cousin in a refugee camp in Indonesia. We escaped at the same time. We made it to 2 different islands near each other in Indonesia. Sadly, he died of malaria. And when he came to America later, I visited my aunt, who had 4 sons and one of them died. The other 3 sons became very successful. Studied, they had a master's degree, their own business, and, one of them taught at university. But I was just surprised at how my aunt just does not have the will to live. She's always very sad and always carried this burden of leaving the body of her dead son behind in the jungle, couldn't give him a proper burial. And that's when I realized that there are some wounds that would never heal. She could never complete that grief. So I just said to her out of the blue one day, I said, I'll go back to Indonesia someday and find his remains for you. And I wanted you to close your eyes and think of Kiara. Carina said someday she'll go to the moon. That's how ridiculous it sounds. Because not only these islands non-existent in the map, even local Indonesian people have not heard of these islands. And Indonesia has 17.5 or nearly 18,000 islands. And most of them are uninhabited. So with these islands, how do we get there? From America, we Google forever, nothing came up. And came to the Indonesian consulate and asked them for direction. They hadn't even heard of these islands. And let's say we got there. I wasn't there when my cousin was buried. I didn't know the grave was still there. What would it look like? But I made that journey in 1998 with my younger brother and my younger cousin, and we made a miracle. Among these unknown graves, in this area that covered with vast jungle that had about 400 graves of old people. And I uncovered one, that was the only one I was looking for. And the reason I knew was because the belongings of my cousin were all there. So I share that story to give hope to our families. Because I got the ashes bowl and I noticed such a tremendous change in my aunt. It's like somebody ripped that tumor off her chest. She has the will to live again. She has the ability to laugh and talk again. So with that hope I put on my website, the next thing I know, people from around the world contacted me and asked me to take them back to this jungle to find graves of their loved ones. And my first answer was, no, I cannot do that. I don't know how to get back to these islands, and I will not recreate the journey again. I hitchhiked with the pirates, I hitchhiked with Navy, I hitchhiked with fishermen boats that went on foot, that went motorcycle every day. Any means I could get closer to another island before destination, that's what I did. But from Perth, 2009, I took the first journey with a few families, and we were successful. We found graves of the loved ones that we were longing for. And then since every year, at least once, I will take families back to this jungle to find graves of the loved ones. That's was Ubu, where I was last when I came back. It was a jungle again. The only evidence of it was once had people that were graves. And this lady here was 89 years old. And she came with me 3 years ago to find the grave of her husband. You ask yourself, she's 89 and she buried her husband more than 30 years ago. Why would she still want to look for his grave? And it's not that she go to the cemetery. She has to go to the jungle and hide up in the mountains and try to find the lost grave. I took her there, and she was able to shed tears for the first time since he died. That's how I knew she had to go, then to see the grave. So, ladies and gentlemen, the journey of both people is like unpeeled an onion. Layer after layer after layer. Sadly, it's layer of sufferings. It's the layers that make your tears just like onion. So, I thank you for listening, and I hope that the statistics I share with you shed some light